to go in for our refreshment. We have food and drinks for you all. But while you are having the refreshment, so I encourage you to speak to someone, talk to anyone next to you, 2 or 3 people, tell them about who you are. You can as well ask them to share what their biggest accomplishment has been in their professional journey, what their challenges have been, and what their goals for the year have been. It's going to be an opportunity for you to network, to meet new people. You'll be able to meet mentors, you'll be able to meet business partners, collaborators. So talk to someone.
To young connections in the house, please don't be afraid to the family to say hi to us.
So we are called Imaginary. We are a digital solutions agency that focuses mainly on startups.
Hi, my name is Mark Peter Sejurina. I am the COO at Imaginary Line. We are quite a good team that deals with digital solutions for startups to help them with hyper growth. We did partner with Founders Lounge, and why we did partner with Founders Lounge is because it's a hub, but also because it's a family to all startup owners. So we figured the best way to get the fattest hunt is by going to the forest and going to where that hunt from, and that's where the Founders Lounge is, because it brings all together these startup founders and people that are in the ecosystem.
Different experienced founders to give us advice. We've had a couple of meetups, and this is the 4th edition.
Hi, my name is Tusi, and I'm part of the Founders Lounge Uganda community. Founders Lounge is a community for startup founders where they convene together to have meaningful conversations so that they do not feel like the founder's journey is a lonely journey. It's a community where founders support founders. And today's program, we have Maxime, the co-founder of SafeBoda. And I think we are excited, and I'm excited myself to learn from his experiences building a startup that you all know and maybe have used SafeBoda for some of the times. So the story and how it all started.
I really wanted to get to know the Boda industry. I didn't want to start that by myself. And so I was very lucky to meet Ricky. I'm sure many of you know Ricky. He's a co-founder at SafeBoda. He was himself like a Boda driver, but a very different one. Like he actually had already a group of Boda that he was working with. And so I met him, we had lunch, and he told me, I really want to make the industry better. I want to create a community of safe drivers. And I was just, okay, well, everything you're telling me is just resonating because that's what I've been experiencing from a customer perspective.
So how did you raise the money required for that? So just tell us about your fundraising journey for your first non-scalable product. So it was mostly a call center.
The early days, we actually bootstrapped SafeBoda by having a side job. We didn't have seed capital just on the idea. So we knew that in order to attract some capital, we had to get some critical mass. We had to prove a bit the concept. And so actually for the first 18 months, we all had a side job on the side. And SafeBoda, we tried to work on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And so those 18 months of keeping it as a side gig, we got to 100 drivers. There we had 100 drivers. We had been in business for over a year. We were making some revenue, not from the app, but actually the drivers were paying what we call the membership fees. So in order to wear the orange jacket, the helmet, they were paying us, I think at the time was 10K a week. The average time to arrival was about 25 minutes. And so we really had only customers that cared so much about safety, cared so much about having a spare helmet, that were willing to wait all that time. We never needed an app for that. All we should have had was a toll-free number and just say, okay, call and you're gonna receive a Boda within X number of minutes.
What do you look for in your hires? What's one thing that you look for when you hire people onto your team?
Yeah. Well, actually, let me start to set the context. I think our team is the thing I'm the most proud of everything we've done. Yeah, Moses, who is actually here tonight, was SafeBoda number 1. So he was with us, when I was talking about the spending time with drivers, having Rolex, understanding the problem, how can we help. Moses was there and he was like,
can Moses just say hi to the team? Just get up. Hi everyone.
Exactly, Nambaimu. And so all this since day one was kind of mechanics and Boda driver, and then we very quickly actually built a small team. It was more like a part-time role, more ambassadors that were helping us to recruit drivers, and as I was mentioning, we had this crazy membership fee system, so they were helping us to collect money. So a lot of the early days of Moses was actually going stage by stage collecting money from drivers. Not the most fun job, but I think we learned a lot from there. And so that was the core initial team of SafeBoda, was to hire drivers. And so our operation team, which has been like in many ways, especially in early days, the heartbeat of SafeBoda, was Boda drivers that we hired to become part of the team. And so we deeply thought, and we were right, that they would understand what was needed. They would help us to build a better product. They would help us to build credibility with the community of drivers. And so it was a great way for us to build the initial team. After that, I think what I would agree with Warren Buffett in terms of how we build a team. You know, a lot of the things we did had never been done before in Uganda. And so I think every time we interviewed people that had a couple of years experience in big corporations, bank, telecos, etc., we thought it was missing something. Like there was no like disruption. They were maybe like already shaped in a certain way to follow like processes, to be very used to system. While first we wanted to break things. We actually wanted to do something different. And so we really looked at personality. We looked at like extremely smart, intelligent people that can learn by themselves. Actually, a lot of focus was we won't have so much time to train our people. I wouldn't say it was a strength from the co-founder either. So we looked at self-driven people that had high potential to grow. Our short-term objective, and don't want to sound like a broken record, but I'm sure you ask any startups would say the same, is we need to get profitable. Like we want to make sure that whatever happens in the world, we don't need investor money. And you know, we can get there. We're almost there in many ways. So that's an exciting and first target. I think once we get there, we will be like looking again at expansion, because like Uganda is not just an isolated case. The problem we're solving is we see it in so many countries. Of course, countries we've been to before. Okay, short answer: 10 years from now, like the region leader on transportation. That I can say for sure. SafeBoda would be focusing on that. And I think there are certain segments we might re-explore as well, because they're just complementary and they make sense. They reinforce like who we are as a brand. Like, I mean, food delivery was another example of things that make sense in theory, was much harder to execute, and in tough times, and you concentrate on your core. But I see yourself going back to that at some point.
I can say I made those many phone calls in the call center, SafeBoda, and
Wow.
I think from the start it was really a business that was solving a problem, and for me that problem was safety. I was working in Pololo. I used to live office really late, and it was the only way I could get a border, so I had to do those back and forths. But really, what I see as the value and what I really loved about, for example, the title of the talk was From Chaos to Order. You managed to organize random border riders into a community and actually create value out of it. And I seem to be in almost the same situation, trying to build, a network of like delivery riders, e-bike riders. What are some of the I would say tips you give someone trying to organize chaos or build up that kind of community? And what are some of the things that you'd say you did in the early stages to make that community still remain as valuable while growing to like thousands of riders at the same time?
Right, about to give away our secret sauce there. No, but I think it's a great question, and to me there are two words that come in mind. So the first one is obsession, and it's to identify one thing that, or maybe two, but not more than two, that you want to improve and just be extremely obsessed about it. I was telling the story of the Boda community, right? Like, I'm not joking, for like 3 years, our only KPI, or main KPI was helmet adoption among our drivers. And we were just like so extremely obsessed about it. We spent so much energy, and then, 9 years later, today we don't need to do much about it. Like, you'll see, like, drivers are wearing their helmets. And it was a key point for us because that was our value proposition, was SafeBoda. It's like, how do we make sure that drivers are wearing their helmets? And when we launched Car, Safe Car was it was a different problem, but we were obsessed, and we are still obsessed about no negotiation. And the reason why we launched Safe Car is because we realized that the other service providers didn't focus on quality, and every time you would order a car, they would ask you for a different price. I had that so many times, and I think a lot of people had that. So we said, okay, how can we make sure that our service is reliable and there is no negotiation? And if you look at the billboards, that's the only thing we say, no negotiation. And when we train our drivers, we just say there's no negotiation, and you just over communicate, and you have zero tolerance. Zero. Like for us, whenever it's like, it's not like we don't give a chance. It's one case of like not wearing a helmet on the Boda side or negotiating on the driver's side, we terminate them immediately. And we just believe that these are like the non-negotiable aspects of being part of our community. So obsession, just like choose your battle. Like when you go from chaos to order, like there are like, again, probably like 100 things you could be doing. Choose your battle, be obsessed about them, have like strong KPI, over-communicate, and build a culture. That was the second word I had in mind, is like how to build that culture. You need to make sure that your customer, and in our case our customer here would be our drivers, recognize the value that we bring. They love the brand, they want to stay within SafeBoda, so we kind of have that great value proposition. On the other side, like just zero tolerance, and that requires a lot of like operation, a lot of systems in place. I mean, Moses has been like the architect of all of that, just to make sure that we maintain that the level of quality.
Hi Max, pleasure to see you once again. All of us know here we have people that profit from chaos. Am I right?
Because you're one of them.
Not really. So I'm interested in knowing how you dealt with such individuals who want to profit from chaos. And I strongly believe because SafeBoda is bringing order, they are fighting, to keep in chaos. How have you dealt with that in all these years? Yes.
Yeah. I think short answer has been to work with the existing system and improving them. So it's not like we're disrupting in some ways, but mostly we're like working with existing Boda drivers. You see a stage, some Boda are SafeBoda, others are not. But our drivers are part of the existing system. They have their friends at the stage, and so it's not like we're not replacing people. If you think, okay, maybe I think an example would be easier to explain. Think about Uber in London, for example, right? They disrupted the taxi industry, which was actually like something that was working well. You had the black cab, to make it simpler, and then they introduced like everyone can now be your private driver. So Onesimus is signing up to Uber, you have a normal car, you're not a black cab, and so you're like disrupting an existing market. In our case, we were actually working with the existing industry, but doing the right thing and doing what everybody wanted to do. Like no one can argue about the fact that drivers should be trained, that drivers should wear helmets, that they should be recognized, have their name, unique identifier. If you look at any like KCC or Ministry of Works initiatives over the past 10 years, everything has been like tending into that direction. And so naturally, we were getting a lot of buy-in from all these institutions, even without working with them directly. They were just like praising us on TV or radio, saying how everyone should be like SafeBoda. And so you just can't argue against people that are trying to do the right thing for the industry. And I think that's why generally we've been fairly well integrated within the existing chaos. And I think it's a gradual thing as well. It's not just like a change happened overnight where we're kicking out Bodas from the city. It's a gradual improvement, and every year we're growing. And of course, our dream is just at one point either SafeBoda or other are following our tracks.
How do you create mindset change? Looking for mindset change within an already people don't want to change that much. For example, in schools, people try to adapt to having tablets or phones or gadgets in class. Yet the rest of the world is doing it, but here guys don't really want to shift towards that direction. So I'm wondering, how did you manage to go hard-headed to move towards your solution? Thank you.
Let me start with the second one, and I will give a very short and simple answer. You can't be an idealist. If you want change, it's not just going to happen. Even if you have an amazing team, amazing operation, you need to have economic incentives. At the end of the day, that's the key. You can do everything right if there is no economic incentives for people to adopt your solution. It's not gonna work. Especially in Uganda, especially when you have a very large portion of the population that is struggling and hand to mouth, etc. So you can't just be an idealist and trying to change things because it's nice. So in our case, there was very clear economic incentive for drivers to join SafeBoda. Whenever they wear our equipment and use the system, they make more money. And so that was the key. I mean, we learned how to do better recruitment, also in terms of tech, with a bit of funding as well. So I think, I'm sure there are people in this room, I've talked before too, if you don't have to build an app or website, don't do it, because it's such a large budget. You can't just spend a bit of money to try to do something. It's just not gonna work. So by the time you decide to build a mobile app or website, you need to make sure that you have a lot of funds and think twice, can you actually build your product by using just WhatsApp? Because WhatsApp is what everyone uses here. We used to use Facebook, but it's still banned in Uganda. So WhatsApp is, if you can get people to use WhatsApp, and you can do so many things with WhatsApp, just do it. And in 90% of the cases, you actually don't need a mobile app. It's such a huge barrier, because you need to kind of spend money for people to download your app. And then once they download your app, that's when you realize, are we actually solving a problem or not? So long story short, if you can avoid building tech, do it. In our case, we start early, wasted money on trying to do things in the wrong way, and then at some point we got serious about it, hired strong engineers, and competing with a company like Uber has 2,000 engineers and we have 16. So you really need to have great people to be able to build a product that's competing with a world-class application.
The one thing you should be focused on is actually getting a client.
Yeah.
And this could be even just a phone contact, that if you need this, I'm the plug. I do not need to have an AI for clothing, that is just resource constraining. So if you just say, if you need, just tell me your size, I'll deliver the clothes to you. That's that simple. And this is everywhere. If you go to Y Combinator website, they'll tell you, focus on non-scalable solutions. Things that are just rudimental, not the next thing. That's what you pick for the investor, but what they're interested in is, do you have a client that is paying? Have you moved to the next? It's about just getting a business first. So I'll ask Nicholas to ask them then.
My question is, you've been operating this market for 9 years. You have learned a lot. If you were to compress it in, like, say I'm a first-time founder, I'm going to start my first startup. What is like the most important thing I should focus on? Then what are like the 2 things I should not focus on? Thanks.
Yeah, it's a great question. My answer is probably gonna be obvious, but the first thing you need to focus on is like your customer and the problem you're solving. And I know it sounds quite obvious, like any entrepreneurship program you're part of or read about is all about that, but I mean, it's so true. At the end of the day, are you solving a real problem? And do people need what you're building? And I would say even at SafeBoda, we got it wrong. When I told you my story, it was about wearing helmets. I mean, how many customers have you seen on SafeBoda wearing helmets? For me, that's why I started SafeBoda. I wanted people to wear helmets, and we pushed it so much. We talking about obsession, a second KPI was passenger helmet adoption. We failed. It just didn't make sense for the market for many reasons. And we're kind of lucky to still build a brand around that value proposition. It made sense. Safety was actually described in different ways. It was described in terms of trust and security. But just think so many times about your users and spend a lot of time just talking to people. Dieudonne mentioned before, you need to talk about your ID, and often people are a bit scared of, I don't want someone to steal my ID, but an ID is nothing. It's all about the execution. And so don't just talk to your friends and family, if you want to do, something with building a solution for restaurants, go and work in restaurants for 2 months, talk with the restaurant, really make sure that you understand extremely well your users and the problem that you're solving. So that's the one thing to do. And the don't. Honestly, the first one, I know we just discussed that, but I believe so strongly in it. It's don't build tech if you don't need to. And tech is not solving a problem. And often tech is not convenience. Right? Joel talked about the clothes. My best experience in Uganda is to buy shoes, where you just go on a WhatsApp group that someone gave you, and then you just send a picture of the shoes you've seen online, say, hey, do you have something like this? And they say, oh yes, I have this. Then they send a Boda, you can try the shoes. I mean, good luck to replicate that on Amazon type of website, right? So it is a very good example of how actually tech very often is not convenient. So don't build tech unless you really have to. That's one. And then 2, don't quit your job too quickly. Make sure you have a side income. Now, I know, it's gonna, if you think that your company or building the early stage is gonna take 6 months, it's gonna take 18 months. So I would say don't do 10 things. Often that's a problem I see actually among entrepreneurs, they're trying to do too many things at the same time. So just have one thing that's making you money and one thing that you want to build, but no more, right? Don't don't focus on too many things at the same time. Like the more you can push the fundraising time, the better, because no one is going to give you money just on an idea in a deck. It's so hard to raise money in this market that you would need to have a proof of concept, you need to have a functioning product, you need to have customer, you need to have revenue, and by then to get there, you probably need over a year. And so someone before was asking me about that, like the seed funding, etc. Like, if you're in Silicon Valley, you can go and you just with a slide deck, they give you money. That's the reality. Here it's not. Like you need to have a functioning product to get any type of money. So the more you can bootstrap by yourself, the more you can use some of the money you make and reduce the pressure as well, because it should be something you enjoy. I mean, it sounds hard to say that, but you should be enjoying building your company.
For my case, this is like the first time for attending any of these events. I've been seeing them around, but today I just decided I had some free time, so I came here with a friend. But honestly, I really didn't know that there was such a huge community of like-minded people. Such a huge community of like-minded people who are really striving to do amazing things. And the fact that you guys brought us the co-founder of SafeBoda, who has now, let's say, 7 years, an expansive period of experience in the market, in the field, dealing with lots of problems. It has really been very educational from my side, because I've been doing a little bit of team building from my end, but I think one thing that I lacked as a person was patience, because I really wanted to see the results. But I think, when you're starting out, what I got out of all this was that when you're starting out, it's okay to really take your time, understand what you're doing, love it.
Okay, today I'm very excited to be at the Founders Launch. It's been an amazing experience, and one of the key takeaways that I've gotten is that when you're running a startup, you shouldn't scale too fast, because sometimes we scale too fast when it's not at the right time. You need to first conquer your territories. Like, for example, like SafeBoda, they first focused on making sure that they are known in Uganda before they decided to scale to other countries like Nigeria, like Kenya. So to me, that's the most key takeaway, and I'm very glad that I've gotten to connect with a lot of people.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I'm called Deutsch Titus from Tafuta Technology. Startups who want to quit up their job before they scale up. Most startups will look at their job and what they're innovating, and they feel like leaving their job, and they will concentrate on this, which is the wrong thing, because you said your job will finance your startup that will help you grow with time and develop. So when your startup develops and you feel like it's in a state where it now needs you, you can now quit this side. But before that, it's a no-go zone. Thank you.
I'm Grace, and I work at Laboremas Uganda as an associate product manager. And hearing what Maxime has shared, how they've been able to discover the product, how they've kept on evolving it to make sure that it speaks to the customers they want, the challenges they faced with the COVID pandemic, being able to try out new markets and see how that comes out. I think it's something I needed to hear about, because being in a process where you want to grow your product and make sure that at the same time it speaks value to the customer is something that is always changing, like it happens all the time. So hearing it from someone who is founder of a successful startup like SafeBoda makes you realize that you're not actually, it's not only happening to you that you have to always keep talking to the people, or that you're having a problem with ambiguity, because he explains how he reached a point and he's not sure what he's going to do next, the next 6 months, but he kept on just going to make sure that I'll keep talking to people and see how it works, then we shall get something out of it. Also, the challenge he had with a team not having a CTO or someone technical, which cost them some time. I think those are good sharings that people who are starting up right now need to know, because at some point you may think I only need the knowledge I have, then you realize I need someone who can do something better than I can do to make sure that we move. And also when he shared about having the right people on the team and building trust on the team, I think that's one of the foundations of being able to have a successful company. Yeah, I could mention many, but I think that's really something that I needed to hear.